Ladies and gents, welcome back. We got another Q&A show today. I got some good questions. I'm going to tell you what they are right now. First one is, this is from a DIY member. He asked why he is used to doing uphill athlete training. I don't know if you guys ever heard of them, but he asked why we use more upper body training than the folks like uphill athlete do. So I'm going to get into some good stuff about why that happens. Next question is, what is the best exercise to prepare for wading in knee-deep sticky mud while setting decoys? I'm going to take this question very seriously I hope you were serious, because you're about to get a real serious answer, friend. And then there's a handful here, and these all come from the same guy who's actually a Backcountry Ready member. Here's the thing. He must have had some kind of premonition, or he might have ESPN or something, and is looking to head to the coaching notes that didn't even come out yet for the preseason phase that starts next week, because I'm going to cover some of his questions are actually covered in those notes already. But I'm going to answer the questions here too, because I think they'll be beneficial for everybody. So first one, if rucking on ascents and descents for training, is it wise to use trekking poles, or is it better to save those for hunts? Next question, how much incline is enough? I hate treadmills, but I don't know if I have steep enough hills in my immediate area. I used the treadmill last year, so I can do it again. We'll cover that. Good information about grades coming up for you. How should we adjust loads if doing rucks for longer than 2.5 hours in zone 2? Is it good to use 20% of body weight the whole time, or should we drop it? Is it necessary to take a break to allow our spine to decompress a bit if we are at that time duration? It's a good question. And this one isn't uphill related. This one has to do with shooting your bow. He's developed a noticeable strength imbalance in his back from shooting his bow so much. So he wants to try. He's trying to quantify it, and he says he'd say his 10 rep max for dumbbell rows is 12 to 15% lower with his left arm than with his right arm. He doesn't have any pain, but he'd like to try to balance it out. So what's the best way to do that? We're going to get to all those questions in this episode. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remind you that the Hunter's Field Test is available for a free download. You can find out exactly what your point A right now is to prepare for hunting season, prepare for going to the mountains, your elk hunt, your sheep hunt, your mule deer hunt, your chucker hunts for the whole season. You can find out right now what you need. It tests your mobility, your movement capacity. It tests your relative strength. It tests your aerobic capacity. It tests your efficiency under load. And it tests your uphill endurance under load. All things that are super important for us as hunters. You can do it for free. Find out where you stand right now. All you have to do is click the link in our show notes. It'll take you right to the download, and you can get started on that. When you do it, here's what I want you to do. I want you to shoot me an email to todd@humanpredatorpackmule.com and let me know how you did. How did you do on the step-up test? How's your relative strength? And if you want, we can start to sort out maybe some things that you can do right now to start prepping yourself for hunting season. If you do it and you are like, man, you know what? Looking at all of this, whether you do well or whether you do poorly, you're like, I don't know what the next step is. Guess who does? I do. So if you do that and you're like, you know what? I need some help with training. If you're listening to this podcast right now, you do the Hunter's Field Test. I'm going to give you 2 weeks free of our DIY program. Normally it's 1 week free. You shoot me an email. I'll give you 2 weeks free, and we'll get you started on some training that's going to build off where you are based on your Hunter's Field Test and get you going in the right direction. Okay. So whether you do it now, whether you do it later, click that link in the show notes and download the Hunter's Field Test for free and find out where you stand right now. So, okay, I'm going to take a sip. So I like to get a decaf Americano in the afternoon because I don't need the caffeine now, mostly because I use a lot of nicotine. But I'm going to take a sip and we're going to party. Okay, so why we use more upper body training than the folks at Uphill Athlete. And part of his question was, is it about balance for health and longevity and all that kind of stuff? And yes, it is. You want to have balanced strength throughout your body for the rest of your life. I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind about organizations like Uphill Athlete and other things that are just mostly solely endurance focused is they're trending towards elite uphill athletes. So that's something to keep in mind. Their training is really dialed in for them. Another thing that I'm going to say, and I mean this in the kindest way possible, but in the truest way possible, is they're just not very good at strength training. I just don't think they really have the best grasp on how to bridge the gap between endurance and strength. And it's something that I've done for a long time, not only training hunters, but also in the special operations world, where you have to have some muscle on you. You don't have to be a jack, you don't have to be huge, but you need to have some muscle on you to be resilient and to be able to do your job. And so I've spent a decade bridging that gap. They're very focused on just endurance. And I think it makes them a little bit short-sighted about how much better they could get at strength training and how much better it might actually improve their performance. Like their justification is, if you have a bunch of upper body mass, you're carrying around mass that you don't need, and it's going to zap your energy. My thing is, it's going to take a ton of upper body mass to really make that different. Now, if you're like difference. If you're big, huge, bulky, like a bodybuilder, we talked about this on the last episode. You don't need all that mass. But if you're 185, 190 pounds, 180 pounds, and you're put pretty well together, and you have a little bit of upper body mass, and you do the conditioning work that you need to do, you phase it out right, you develop your aerobic system, you'll be fine. So I think that gets overemphasized a little bit too much in their programs, that they say you don't about the upper body mass. I don't think it matters as much as they make it out to be, especially for us, because most of us aren't elite endurance athletes. We aren't elite mountaineers or anything like that. We're people that like to hunt. We're people that like to train, and we want to be in shape for that. Another thing to consider about this, and it's something that I come back to quite often, is that we're humans first. And being human has a lot more requirements on us than being hunters. And so the first thing is having some muscle mass is important for longevity. It absolutely promotes your longevity. It keeps you stronger. It helps you maintain your power. All of those things are really good. Now, again, we don't have to be big jack bodybuilders, but doing some upper body strength training to maintain your upper body strength and also keep some muscle on your body is protective. And it's also going to help you perform in a lot of different ways. But also keeping in mind that, like, man, we got to move couches. We got to help people move. We got to work in the yard. We got to do whatever other tasks of our life and things that we enjoy that require some upper body strength and some upper body muscle. I think getting too task oriented or too task focused on things like that gets very short-sighted for us within the rest of the context of the rest of our lives. And so having some upper body strength, having some upper body mass carries over. And I've read their books. I've read both their books. I've looked at also, I forget what Jason Koop's ultra running company is called, but I've read his book, and I've listened to different things they talk about, and even their strength coaches. And honestly, I don't mean to be a dick, but they just don't understand. They don't understand how to bridge that gap. They don't understand how to use special strength training methods that actually build muscular endurance. So it's not like you're just carrying useless muscle mass around. If you know how to train your fast twitch muscle fibers so that they perform aerobically, and if you know how to train your slow twitch muscle fibers to develop their capabilities, then you're not carrying around useless muscle mass. You're carrying around muscle mass that's going to work for you and make your aerobic system far more efficient. But I've looked at their stuff, and they don't use those methods. So they don't understand how to bridge that gap. So I think they're a little bit short-sighted, and they don't have the tools with which to apply good upper body training that's going to carry over. Now, we just do regular upper body strength training in our programs, but we also do a lot of high intensity continuous training. We do muscular endurance training. We do slow twitch fiber development. So in that case, you're not carrying around muscle mass that's not doing anything for you. It's actually making your aerobic system more efficient, and you're improving your fitness as you do it. So that's a couple of the big reasons. And I think there's another thing that we need to keep in mind is it's okay to look good with your shirt off. You know what I mean? I think we all, like, one of the things I say all the time, our training is not based on developing aesthetics. It's not focused on that. It's focused on performance. It's focused on performance in the mountains. It's focused on performance in life. It's not really at all focused on aesthetics. That said, everybody wants to look good naked. There's not a person on this earth that doesn't want other people to look at them and say, I like how that looks. We all kind of want that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very human thing. So doing some upper body training that makes you feel pretty good when you look at yourself in the mirror, or when, like, your significant other looks at you and feels attracted to you and maintains that attraction, or like if you're trying to find a significant other, being attractive is a good thing. And so when you step back and look at things from a human perspective, having some mass on your upper body, having some upper body strength is not only useful in to the degree that we have to do other things with our body, but it makes us feel a little bit better about ourselves sometimes, and it makes us more attractive to the people that we want to be attractive to, whether we're men or women. It doesn't really matter. We all want to look good. And so training to maintain some of that is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And like I said, you can train your upper body so that it is useful to your aerobic system and to your endurance. It doesn't have to be this, this old school mindset that it's just powerlifting, or it's just Olympic lifting, or it's just bodybuilding. If you understand how to use specialized techniques that build aerobic efficiency in your fast twitch muscle fibers and your slow twitch muscle fibers, and you tie that in with solid endurance training, your upper body becomes useful. So for health, for longevity, for using our body in different ways, and for maintaining how we like to look, I think it's important that even as hunters, we do some upper body training, right? Because nonetheless, like, even so, like, we have to carry packs. I don't know, most day packs are probably going to be around 20, 30 pounds. Okay. So that adds up. And then also, we pack something out, things get a lot heavier. And over time, we need that resilience. So having some structure to carry that weight is going to be useful. I think another thing that we have to keep in mind is that when you look at the endurance community, and I know this because I've had quite a few endurance folks that ended up beating the hell out of themselves. They end up coming to our gym in Virginia, and they come in and they're broken. They don't move well. They don't feel good. None of that. And one of the reasons for that is in the endurance community, a lot of those people just don't like gyms and they don't like to lift. And so it's easy for them to rationalize strength training as a very minor part of their program, or to not have a fully encompassing strength training program as part of their training. And so that's another thing to keep in mind. There's a big bias in that community away from strength training because they don't understand how to truly apply it to help meet their endurance goals. So that's just one more thing to keep in mind. I think I got your question pretty good with that one. So if you have a follow-up, just go ahead and ask. Now, what is the best exercise to prepare for wading in knee-deep sticky mud while setting decoys? So I've done this. I know what this is like. You're pulling those suckers. It feels like you're getting sucked into the center of the earth. And if your boots aren't attached, like they're staying there they're staying there in the mud. One of the things that's big and is very overlooked in a lot of training programs is hip flexor strength. And so the one of the best things you can do is train your hip flexors. Easy way to do that is to stand up, drive one leg into the ground, put a weight like a kettlebell or like a band on the other leg, and whichever leg has the kettlebell or the band on it, drive that knee up and hold it there and do some isometric holds and build some hip flexor strength. We do various hip flexor exercises throughout the training year in human predator Packmule programs because they're important. And one of the reasons that we do that is, first, because we need them. Right? When we're going uphill, we're going downhill, we're trying to pull our feet out of the mud, all of those things, it requires hip flexor strength. And it also stabilizes your pelvis. It keeps your back healthier. It does a lot of good things for you. And a lot of times people say, oh, my hip flexors are tight. Really what they're experiencing is hip flexors that feel tight. The perception is that the muscles are tight, but really the muscles are just kind of weak. They can't generate enough force. They're not getting enough nervous system input. They might just not even be big enough, and so training your hip flexors does a lot of good things for keeping your back healthy, keeping your hips healthy, and keeping you performing, right? So you can drive uphill, so you can pull your feet out of the mud. So one of the best things that you can do is actually start to strengthen your hip flexors. When you do that, one of the important things to do are things that split your pelvis. So when I say that, it means that one side of your hips, one hip is extended. So think about standing up straight. When you stand up straight and your hips are locked out, that's extension. The other side is flexed. Doing that stresses the one hip flexor more, which is good to build strength, but it also takes some of the stress off of your back. So like doing traditional sit-ups, things like that aren't the best thing. Because of the stress that they put on your back. But splitting your pelvis and maintaining stability on one side while you strengthen the other is going to be the best way to go about it. Now, another thing that you want to do is hip mobility work. So increasing the range of motion just by actually moving your hips is going to be a big thing. So when you combine that with hip flexor strength, you start to get hips that work pretty well at pulling your feet out of the mud when you need to. We use something called CARs a lot, controlled articular rotations, doing them standing, doing them in a kneeling position, doing them in the quadruped position, which is your hands and knees. All of those are going to improve your hip flexor, your hip range of motion, your hip mobility. And that's going to help coincide as you strengthen your hip flexors to improve your ability to get your hips through a full range of motion so that you can pull your feet out of the mud and things like that when you need to. Another thing to think about are things like step ups, things like that, where you actually drive off of the leg that you're lifting, because you have to raise that knee, then you have to drive off of it. And that helps a lot. It also puts the weight on other parts of your body as you flex your hip, as you lift that knee. So for example, if you're carrying a decoy bag, you're going to have to, a lot of times you have that on your back or you have it on one of your shoulders. So the load is somewhere else on your body when you go to flex that hip and lift your foot up out of the mud. So it helps to create some balance, and it also kind of replicates that situation where you'll be walking through the mud with a weight somewhere else on your body. So things like that, included in your strength training, are also going to help a ton. So those are the kind of things to focus on when you're trying to pull your feet out of the mud. And it's also just going to help you if even if you're not a duck hunter that's going out and throwing decoys. If you're someone that hunts in the mountains or whatever it might be, an uphill and downhill type of person, all of this stuff that I just mentioned is going to help you move up and down the hill far more efficiently and far more safely. So, all right. Now, what about the trekking poles questions for uphill and downhill training? It depends. So if you're going out for a really long ruck, let's say you're going out and you have some weight on your back and you're going onto some gnarly terrain, it could be useful to have your poles for downhills, especially if it's let's say you're going out for multiple hours, 3-4 hours. It might be good at times to use them to take some of the stress off of your knees. But it's, so you save your knees a little bit. But another thing that we have to think about, let me take a step back, especially if you're close to season, right? Because we don't want to put unnecessary stress on things when we're close to season. It also kind of replicates what you might do in the mountains. So if you're going out for really, really long stuff on gnarly terrain, it's not a bad idea to consider taking your poles along, at least, just in case you get in a situation where they could be really useful to you, especially on a steep downhill or something like that. Now, we also do need to build quad strength, and we need to build control for terrain. One of the things that's going to help you do that is rucking on terrain, or even just hiking on terrain without poles, right? Because then your quads have to work to slow you down, keep you stable, all that kind of stuff. So in most situations, when you're training, I would say ditch the poles and just hike or ruck, right? And if you're worried about the grade and the type of terrain, decrease the weight, and just go with something you can control, and then start to build back up to where you need to be. But I would say, for most part, ditch the poles until it's time to go hunting so you can build some strength, but just be wise about the terrain that you're on. But if you're going really, really long, take them with you, because you never know what you could get into. And it also could just save your knees if you're in a situation where you're out there for a really long time. So, all right. So how much incline is enough? I hate treadmills, but I don't have steep enough hills in my, so you flatlanders, you Midwest fellas and ladies, listen up to this answer. Okay. This one's going to be important to you, because I've driven through the Midwest many times in my life. You guys ain't got in the hills. And so if you're going to go west, you need to listen up to this one. I hate treadmills, but I don't have steep enough hills in my immediate area. I used the treadmill last year, so you can do it again if you want. So most treadmills are going to go up to about a 15% grade, which is relatively steep for most hiking. 15% is going to be good, so you can get a lot of good work out of a treadmill with your pack on. 15%. Is it exactly like being on terrain? No. But if you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice. Less than 10% probably isn't going to get you very much. So if the hills in your neighborhood, or the things that you do have access to, are 10% grade or less, then it's probably not going to give you all the juice you need to be ready to go to the mountains and walk uphill and downhill. So that's the one thing to keep in mind. So if you don't have something that's over 10%, you're going to have to get on the treadmill. Another thing to keep in mind is I like a combination of the treadmill and the stair climber, because then you get a mix of grades. Because like I said, you can get most treadmills to go up to a 15% grade, but the stair climber, stairmaster, whatever the hell you want to call it, most of them are somewhere between a 35% and a 50% grade. So that gets you ready for really, really steep shit. So if you kind of combo some treadmill work with stair climber work, you kind of cover all of the grades that you might be on and prepare for pretty much anything. And then that way, you're ready to go to the mountains. If most of your hiking's around 15%, then you get into some gnarly stuff. You've developed some of the strength, and the conditioning to be able to go uphill, no matter the grade, right? So I really like both. If you only have a treadmill, then you only have a treadmill. Just do your work on there, and that's what it is. But if you have access to a stair climber, do that. One of the things that I think that people need to keep in mind, though, is like, don't just get on there and burn, right? There's a time to get after it, and we certainly do. We do some lactate threshold intervals for people in the stair climber. We do some other stuff, some other types of workouts that are a little bit more intense on the stair climber. But most of your work needs to be zone 1, zone 2 aerobic capacity work until you really start to develop your aerobic capacity and your strength endurance and all that kind of stuff under load. It can feel painfully slow to stay into those heart rate zones. That's totally fine. Go slow. Just go slow, deal with how slow it is, and build the efficiency so that you then can go fast and be efficient when you do it. I see people just get on there and tear. I've seen it on videos on Instagram and all kinds of stuff, and just moving way, way, way faster than they need to get what they need out of the workout. So 15% grade on your treadmill. If you don't have a hill that's over 10, you need to get on the treadmill, and then combine the treadmill with the stair climber, and you have a pretty good mix of terrain covered if you do it that way. All right, so let's go to the load adjustment. I'm gonna have a drink real quick. I'm gonna take a sip of my decaf Americano because it's delicious. There's a little place. I just burned myself. There's a little place across the street that makes them pretty good. All right, how should we adjust loads if we're doing rucks for 2.5 hours or so and want to stay in zone 2? Stay with 20%, or should we decrease it? Is it necessary to take a break to allow our spine to decompress? If you're not used to going over 2 hours and being under load for that long, I think it's wise. To drop the weight at first and to acclimate, and then walk the weight back up. You can certainly get to 20% if you're consistent and you start with a lighter load and walk it back up. I've seen people kind of beat themselves up because they jump into those long rucks and they haven't really acclimated to it. And we'll get to the second part of that question that'll help with the decompression and asking all that. So start a little bit lighter if you're going to go longer, and then walk the weight back up. It might just take one ruck and then recovery, and then you can walk the weight back up. But it is smart if you're not used to being under load for that long to go down and then walk the weight back up. The pace also matters, right? So if you're used to getting out with 20% of your body weight, going for 45 minutes or an hour and kind of maintaining a pretty fast pace, you might just have to slow down, because all of that stress is going to accumulate over a long time. And, whether you realize it or not, your pack is doing different things as you walk. It's trying to pull you backwards. It's trying to pull your spine into extension. It's rotating. It's trying to pull you in rotation. And it's also trying to pull you from side to side. And there's those little bits of micro stress that you're not totally perceiving, but are happening. And so you have to be prepared for that. Part of the training that we do in Human Predator Packmule, from the core work we do to the strength work we do to the mobility work we do, helps you prepare for those things. But preparation also has to be matched with the way that you train with your ruck. And so slowing down a little bit as you go on those longer rucks will decrease some of that stress, because it's going to accumulate, right? So slow down for that first long one. You might not go as far, and that's okay, but slow down, get your body to acclimate, and then, worry about your pace the next time, because right now you're just increasing your body's acclimation to being under load for a long time. Okay. So that's an important thing to do, especially, as we're entering into the preseason, and we're going to be doing some longer workouts that actually start to mimic what we might do on a day of hunting, and the decompression part. So two things there. Again, I said that he kind of almost preemptively asked a question that I answered in our coaching notes for this coming week. You should stop and readjust your pack as often as you need to. I mean, make sure your pack fits well. And if you feel it start to slip, you feel like your buckle's loosening, any of that kind of stuff, stop, adjust it, or stop and take your pack off and adjust it. And it's also totally fine if you're on a really long ruck to stop and drop your pack every once in a while. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, because think about what we do when we're hunting. We'll hike for a while, we'll drop our packs, we'll take a drink of water, we'll glass, we'll look around, we'll put our packs back on, and then we'll walk again. So absolutely take your pack off, take some breaks if you're on a long ruck. It's not going to hurt your fitness, but it will help your resiliency, and it'll help keeping you from beating yourself up too much. And again, like, don't just trudge through shit. If shit isn't fitting right and you feel things loosening, you feel the load start to shift back farther on your back and farther down towards your butt, stop. If you can adjust it while it's still on, adjust it. If you need to take it off, take a minute, readjust it and put it back on. Do that. There's no sense in being a hero, because all you're doing is training your body to be inefficient. That's all you're doing. You're training to make yourself worse if you don't stop and take breaks. It's not making you stronger. It's just going to compound and make things worse. And then it also is just like, we do that when we're hunting. What's the big deal with doing it a little bit in training? Now, if you're on a short ruck, like 45, 60 minutes, you probably shouldn't have to take your pack off, but it does matter to, if you're going and you feel it slip, even when you're on a short ruck like that, to stop and readjust to make sure everything is fitting right. Because if you don't, it's going to affect the way you walk. It's going to also put stress on your joints in weird ways. And it's also going to affect the way that you breathe. And if you get inefficient with any of those things, it's just going to zap your energy more than it should while beating the piss out of your body. So absolutely stop, readjust, decompress as you need to, especially if you're on those really long rucks. Now, the last question about the bow, shooting a bow and one side of your body feeling a lot stronger than the other, especially with pulling strength. What can you do? I mean, the biggest thing is just doing unilateral upper body training, right? Press with unilaterally means one limb at a time. So press with one arm at a time, pull with one arm at a time, and a lot of T-spine mobility work, thoracic spine mobility work to keep things in balance, right? Another thing that you want to do is focus on doing the opposite motions, right? So if you're right-handed, you're pulling with your bow with your right hand a lot, and you're posting with your left arm, so you're essentially pressing. Doing the opposite motions in the commensurate volume is going to help there too. So you might press a little bit more with your right arm, and you might pull a little bit more with your left arm, and so that can start to balance things out. It could be a few reps here and there. It could be an extra set, whatever it is. And that's only if you're seeing that you have these deficits. If you don't have a deficit, it doesn't really matter. You're probably fine. But it is important to do the T-spine mobility and to do unilateral work regardless. I mean, that's good just to do as a human, but also definitely if you're shooting your bow a lot. So you could slightly increase the volume on the other side and make sure you're doing the opposite motions a lot to kind of create that balance and make sure that you're keeping your joints healthy. So that's what you can do. That's about what you can do to make sure that this works. It doesn't have to be some overbearing amount of volume, just enough to send the signal that, like, hey, we can balance things out here, right? So that's pretty much what you can do to solve that problem, and just be consistent with it. Because, and remember, you have to do it over time, because think about all of the time you spent shooting your bow. So you have to spend an equal amount of time trying to undo the problem, right? And that's one of the things that people walk into with fitness all the time, right? So it's like, if you have 10 years of bad habits, you're not going to undo 10 years of bad habits in 3 months. It's going to take some time. Same thing, you're doing a healthy thing here, shooting your bow, getting ready for the season. It's still, that's a lot of bow draws. So it's going to take some time to undo it, and you have to be patient and consistent and commit to the process. Okay. As it goes with anything else. So those are all the questions for today. Quick reminder before we go, click that link in the show notes, go download the Hunter's Field test, do the mobility testing, movement capacity testing, do the relative strength testing, do the 3-mile ruck, do the 10-minute step up test, shoot me your results in an email, and we'll talk about them. And until next time, I appreciate you guys being here and listening. And thanks so much for sending your questions. And I'll be posting more soon.